it is possible to make these products much safer. I think the companies don't want to. I think it hurts their profits. It hurts their quest for world domination, whatever that means. If the companies don't want to produce products that are safe to society, move the hell over for a company that does.
Joining me on the Tech Report today is internationally renowned security researcher and author of Rewiring Democracy, Bruce Schneier. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So OpenAI and Anthropic are at odds again, this time over whether or not AI companies should be liable for when the AI tools are involved in causing harm, essentially. It would be that injury or death. There's a bill in Illinois which would absolve any AI lab in the event that the harm created by their tool caused 99 or less deaths or serious injuries. OpenAI's argument here is obviously AI tools are tools and it's the user's liability, not theirs. What do you think of that sort of argument?
I mean, that's kind of a bullshit argument. Right? These are not tools like a hammer. Right? These are not passive tools. These are models that are designed very carefully to do certain things and not do others. It's more like an automobile. It's more like we could probably use a handgun as a metaphor here. And it's not always true that in these complex tools, the manufacturer is not liable. I mean, in an automobile, sure, it could be a perfectly functioning car and the person driving it drives it into a crowd, or it could be a malfunctioning car that kills people. And there's lots of court cases that assign partial liability depending on what the tool is, how it's used, and where the liability lies. For the AI companies to say, not our fault, blanket, if it's less than 99, not sure why, the 100th death suddenly changes things. Right? And you can tell, right, because that number is arbitrary, it's obvious that this doesn't make much sense. We have a real problem here in that these tools are incredibly powerful and they're incredibly capable, but they are designed by for-profit corporations for their shareholders' benefit. That's the only thing they're designed for. And these companies should be expected to create these tools in a way that doesn't harm people. Right? Just like a pharmaceutical company has to design its tools so it doesn't harm people. And there's an incredible amount of government bureaucracy to make sure that pharmaceuticals don't harm people. And, if a pharmaceutical company decided to market a drug that kills people and they say, well, it killed less than 100 people, so we're not liable, we'd look at them and say, you're freaking crazy. And we can't do anything different with this technology, right? It's not magic. And I want very much when we talk about AI to understand when we're talking about the technology and the companies that create and market the technology. Liability is not about the technology, it's about the companies. It's about their profits.
Another argument against giving AI labs liability in these sorts of instances is that it will stifle their growth with their AI arms race, and then China will win and all those sorts of things. Is that a fair argument or just a convenient lobbying narrative?
Totally a convenient lobbying narrative. And we break it into two parts. Let's talk about the arms race first. That actually is a bullshit lobbying narrative. Right? This is not the 1960s. These technologies not being developed in secret government labs, and there's a space race and nuclear race. It's not the way it works. And if you think about it, U.S., China, a couple of years ago, China produced the DeepSeek model. Right? They were denied access to U.S. chips. So they had to do some really clever engineering to create a model using older chips. All that engineering was made public. Right? Everybody can learn from it. A few years before, engineers at Google invented Transformer, the fundamental building block of generative AI. That's a public paper that everyone learns from. That's the way science works today. We're not in this space race, nuclear race, 1960s, US versus China. And that is a self-serving metaphor that the companies use. Right. So that's one. Let's talk about innovation. A notion that regulation stifles innovation is also a bullshit narrative that the companies like to talk about. Right? There's no lack of innovation in pharmaceuticals or drug discovery. There's no lack of innovation in restaurants in your community because there are health codes. I mean, what regulation does is incent innovation. We want innovation in AI that doesn't kill people, actually less than 99 or more than 99. We'd like it not to kill anybody. That'd be awesome. And we want innovation in AI that does that, or I guess that doesn't do that. And regulation will incent that innovation. If these labs are liable, potentially liable, when AI kills somebody, they're going to innovate, guaranteed. If they're not liable, they're not going to innovate. They're just going to kill people in blocks of less than 100 and say, well, not our problem. What is it about 100? I get that we're living in a base 10 society, but it's a weird number. Why not a gross of people? Less than 144.
I must admit, I couldn't figure out why they said 100.
It's a round number. You know why. I mean, right, but it's not a number that's meaningful.
Yes,
It's a round number.
it sounds good.
Actually, it sounds terrifying. Doesn't sound good at all.
Well, I mean, it's a nice number.
Hi, I'm an AI. I'm only going to kill less than 100 people. Please let me in. What?
It also conveniently means that any AI chatbot radicalizes and then instructs somebody on how to commit a mass casualty event. Most of them don't surpass 100. I'm thinking of school shootings and bombings and things like that. Rarely do pass 100.
And remember, we're not saying that the AI is automatically 100% liable if it does that. Right? In our courts, we have very well-worn theories of partial liability. And that's what courts figure out. Was it your car? Was it my car? Was it me as a driver? Was it you as a driver? Was it the road conditions? Was it, the time of day? All those things will go into a court case about an auto accident. And liability will be assigned based on a lot of variables. We're going to need that same kind of robust case law for AI, because it will be complex.
I can think of a number of cases, certainly in the UK at the very least, where people have been encouraged, I don't know if I could quite say incited, to commit acts of violence. And then if it was a person, there are laws against aiding, abetting, and incitement. I mean, maybe this is an asked and answered question, but why are these AI leaders trying to exempt themselves from laws that would apply to a person, but somehow is filtered through AI and no longer applies to them?
And you know the answer, because they would like even more billions of dollars. Right? And being exempted from public safety laws is very profitable. And again, separate the tech from the white male tech billionaires in Silicon Valley that own this tech, that control this tech. A lot of this is about profit. I think we should incent research in AI that doesn't kill people in blocks less than 100. That feels like good research that we as society will benefit from.
If we imagine that the opposite kind of bill was passed, which does, I mean, we've kind of gone into it a bit already, but one that says you are specifically liable in the event of any deaths, of anything like that, what sort of effect would that have on the open source models? And the sort of, would it maybe create an inadvertent monopoly of AI companies that can afford legal cases and to pay for overstepping on that line?
But there are a bunch of ways to do that. And so remember, the law wouldn't say you're automatically liable, right? I mean, there's no law that says when someone is stabbed, the knife manufacturer is automatically liable and the stabber just gets off scot-free. Right? It will be some partial liability regime that will be complex and the courts will figure out. So that's certainly going to be true. And, sort of when that happens, we can imagine companies, right, lawyering up to figure this out. Open source is an interesting question. We've hit this before with software liabilities, not even AI, just regular software. And we have some models. In the US, there are Good Samaritan laws, right? So if you're a doctor and you prescribe bad drugs and or do bot surgery, I can sue you for malpractice. But if I'm lying on the street bleeding and you are a bystander who comes and helps me and you make a mistake, I can't sue you in the same way, right? I can't hold you to that medical standard because you are not a doctor. There's an emergency, you're helping. Those are called Good Samaritan laws to protect individuals from that exact thing. We can imagine a similar regime, and it was talked about for open source software for decades. That if there's an open source piece of software and it does something bad, the maker isn't liable because there's no contractual relationship between you and that software. It's available for free, as is, you download it. Now, there are companies that provide that protection. Red Hat, when Red Hat comes into being, well before IBM buys it, they're selling Linux, which is available for free. But what they are selling is, we're a company, right? You have a contractual relationship with us. We are going to stand by this open source software. Right? If there's a problem, you can sue us, and you pay for that. So we can do this. It doesn't have to stifle open source. You can imagine ways it would, but we can create the laws so that it doesn't.
I should say, obviously, that Illinois is quite a fan of clamping down on these sorts of things, and I think 90% of the people that were polled randomly when this was announced said that they would completely oppose it. But where do you think AI labs would go if they were emboldened with something like this passing in another state, or maybe federally, given the approach to regulation?
Well, it wouldn't be federally US, right? I mean, that's just not going to happen. It would be, if it's somewhere big, it would be the EU. You can imagine the EU, because the EU has an AI Act. They think about regulating AI. So you can imagine a law that absolves liability. I think the problem is that liability is global. And if the law absolves liability in Illinois or even in the EU, it's not going to matter because the rest of the world is still up in the air. A law that forces liability, that says, look, you're going to be liable. You don't get off the hook. In a big enough market, will have the opposite effect, will spur innovation. Right? It's called the Brussels effect. Right? GDPR in the EU is passed, and I benefit from it, even though I am not a European citizen or currently in Europe, because companies meet the regulation globally. California has the same effect. There is an Internet of Things security law, that you and I benefit from, because California is just a massive market. So if there is a massive market that says, hey, if your AI is involved in death or producing child porn or all the bad things the AI does, you're going to be held liable. The companies will globally innovate to make their AI better. And that's what I want. I mean, the real benefit of arresting Elon Musk for child porn, which seems like a no-brainer, is that he will be forced to fix his AI globally, and everyone else will look at that and say, we need to do the same thing. And this is where regulation incents innovation. It's innovation that society wants, not just innovation that the company's shareholders want.
I think, and well, maybe this is slightly too biased to me, but fingers crossed, there's the case in France that's happening at the moment, which...
Right. France is the country that has decided to hold X accountable for its output. Right. And which seems obvious. If it was a person, it certainly will be held liable for its output. Why is it different? Because it's not a person. And this is important. I mean, we really need to think about this in, what is the same and what is different? How do we do this if it's a person, if it's not a person, and really think about what that means. And this is going to be hard. In the coming years, we're going to have to figure out how to regulate this technology and to what extent. It's going to permeate every aspect of society. It's going to do all sorts of things, good and bad. And understanding where it matters, how it matters, is going to matter.
To me, absolving the AI companies of these sorts of liabilities reminds me a lot of the mistakes that were made around social media and that's inception, where they were basically succeeded in releasing intentionally, I mean, legally found to be intentionally dangerous products, while at the same time socializing the damages that they cause onto the individual rather than accepting responsibility. Are you recognizing the same similarities that I'm seeing here as well between social media and AI?
There are a lot of similarities between our unwillingness to regulate social media and what is happening today. And that's certainly one of them. But it's also the monopolization, the advertising, the lock in, the harms, the fact that we prioritize corporate profits over public good. So there's a lot that we could learn from our unwillingness, inability, our lack of regulating social media that we should apply to regulating AI. I don't know if it's going to happen. One of the hard things is that regulation moves slowly and these companies move quickly. This isn't an
Hmm.
AI problem. This is a generic tech and government problem, but we need to solve it. We need to figure out how to regulate at the speed of tech,
Hmm.
uh, right? How to build agile regulation, and we don't know how. But we also need to figure out, what we want out of these technologies. I mean, right now, we're kind of organizing society around the near-term financial benefits of a bunch of white male tech billionaires, which is kind of a dumb way to do it.
When we last spoke, you said something along the lines of if you can't create AI that doesn't make people want to kill themselves, you should move over for somebody that can make AI that way. Do you think the same applies in this scenario? Because some of the confusion here, I guess, comes from that a lot of what makes AI a useful tool could also be used to find out how to make biological weapons or things like that.
Well, I mean, this is the question of partial liability, right? It's not necessarily true that a company would automatically be 100% liable if an AI, tells a human how to do something bad. And this is something the court should have to figure out. I do think that as a company that is producing a commercial product, they have to pay attention to the law. And if they don't want to, I would rather get innovation from companies that do. Right? That feels like I will be better served as a member of society if that's true. Now, is it possible that AI cannot ever be controlled in this way? Potentially. And that's something the courts can figure out, right? I mean, this is not, I just don't want the companies to get to decide where the liability lies and how, right? It has to be us, society, the courts. And I do think it is possible to make these products much safer. I think the companies don't want to. I think it hurts their profits. It hurts their quest for world domination, whatever that means. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, and it doesn't mean that someone else can't do it.
I mean, right now, the companies that we're talking about are responsible for making sure that their models are secure against misuse.
I don't know if they are. What do you mean by responsible? Are they liable for that?
Well, I mean, I suppose this is the question. I don't. From my research, there's no law saying they are or are not, which is
Yeah.
why this bill in Illinois is quite as.
Yeah, yes, but yeah, the bill is the wrong place to do it. This really needs to be
Huh.
done by the courts. Courts are good at this. They actually are. They have hundreds of years of experience in figuring this kind of thing out. And I don't think we should short circuit the courts. It will be complicated. And yes, these companies might lose some money, right? It might cost something to make these products safer. I'm okay with that, right? It is. I guess it is what that quote you gave. If the companies don't want to produce products that are safe to society, move the hell over for a company that does.
Do you think that maybe there's a bit of a middle ground where we have some sort of independent body that is then used to monitor and kind of audit these companies rather than letting them mark their own homework?
Yes, and that's the courts.
Mm,
That's what the courts do.
mm.
They are an independent body that when there is a case, they figure it out. And part of that figuring out will be an audit.
Just finally, the thing that really struck me as I was preparing for this was that a lot of AI companies are very loud about the hypothetical and the existential threats of AI, but are very quiet and now, in some cases, in the case of OpenAI, lobbying against the real world dangers that are already here. Is that an intentional misdirection, or is it more of an inexcusable amount of ignorance towards
No,
what
no,
AI is encouraging people to do?
it's a misdirection. It's not ignorance. They know what they're doing. Uh, Generally, if you claim all of these existential threats, you are also touting the power of your model. Remember, both OpenAI and Anthropic are headed to IPO, so their goal is as much hype as absolutely possible. And that kind of existential threat talk feeds into the hype. Note that they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just talking about it. But yes, that definitely is the hype.
Well, Bruce Schneier, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear more of the Tech Report, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, you can get episodes of the Tech Report wherever you get your podcasts.